something out of it as best you can, but, and even in here we get, some of that, and that's okay. I was taught that in treatment, that I was both. And when I came to Narcotics Anonymous, I had to learn this is addiction, and I'm clean, and I have a disease and all this stuff, but that's kind of deviating. But it's a learning process, and like I said, when I joined service work, that was very important, the traditions. Learn how to deal with people. People have different personalities. I have a personality. I like to think I'm right. I like to think I know everything. And a lot of times, for me being, is that a timer, Rusty? Because if it is, I'll be quiet. A little dinging thing. Are you timing me?
No.
Oh, okay.
But it can be. I'm a teacher.
And no, I'm okay. I'm okay with that. I like people doing that. What I was going to say was, in the business meeting, for me to be, one of the things I learned how to be humble in is voting for something that I did not agree with necessarily as an individual, but I knew would help the group. And again, I would vote for something that I knew would help the group versus my own whatever. Okay, so I think that was probably one of the biggest ways I've been able to apply on the group level is that. But it's important. It's extremely important that we have unity and welcome newcomers and all that stuff. And we have a high number of newcomers in this group, and so it's important for me with some time and other people to greet them and try to maintain unity. Addicts are dysfunctional, even with yours clean. It happens. We're human. Some people work on it, some people don't. I've not worked on stuff. My stuff's internal. I'm not the type of external person who's causing chaos to the group. I don't like that shit. Some people do. And learning how to deal with those people can be difficult, but and nutrition's helped me do that. So, and it helps me kind of get out of the way too, and let them be where they're at. I can't explain which one that applies or whatever the fuck, but I don't mean to cuss so much, sorry. But it helps me to kind of say, okay, what's my part? I can be I'm late to meetings a lot now, but I can be a good role model. I can sit in my meeting the chair the whole time. I can greet newcomers. If someone's relapsed, I don't need to treat them like shit. If they're on other things, I'll just say it, methadone, Suboxone, whatever. I don't have to make them feel like shit and tell them get the fuck out of here or nothing, because that's not unified. Okay. I don't know if that's too much. I shouldn't open that can of worms maybe, but these things happen to people sometimes. They come here still using or confused, because it is confusing, and sometimes a few members will not treat them well, or they get a bad impression. Sometimes it's just them being self-centered and thinking everything's about them, which we've all been. You're talking about me. Okay. But that unity is important when it relates to that kind of stuff. So I just try to be part of the solution. If chaos is going on, I don't participate. I'm not perfect. Don't talk about people. That stuff's very damaging. So all I can do is for myself, what am I doing to be an example? So anyway, I'm good. I love you guys. I'm really glad you guys are here. I really need to get out of myself today. I've been really consumed, fighting off another cry, but I'm really glad to be able to get out of myself today. It's very important. I got plenty of things to do, but this is very important that I get out of myself for a few hours. Love you guys.
Thank you, Shannon.
Richard Nematic.
Richard.
Yeah, the traditions, like Shannon was saying, I came here and they were like this thing hanging out there, and you don't really get involved in them until you're a little bit in on this. But they're important to everybody because, it's like the steps are my relationship with myself, and the traditions is how I relate with y'all in here. And, I went through, I got clean in a strong group. We had a strong service structure, so it was, I got hammered on the traditions a lot when I was early on, because I learned by making mistakes. I'd do something and somebody pulled me aside and said, hey dude, you might want to read this, and by the way, I'm not any expert, like Rusty said, on the traditions. They're in the book. Read them. They're in this book too. Read them, and that's important for y'all, because what I've learned in my recovery is a lot of people will come and say, well, this tradition says this, and this is the way we need to do this, and it's important for me to know what that tradition really says, because sometimes people will push agendas by saying, quoting traditions, which is absolutely nothing to do with what they want. You know, and like pick that up through experience. And it's like the reading says, you know, we pick up information as we've talked to members and visit various groups. But there's no, you know, read the tradition and know what it says before you take somebody's word for this is how we're supposed to do stuff. I didn't want to read one thing because I've run into that a lot. I've run into people pushing issues through, and this isn't part of the traditions. This is actually a betweener, and so it's in between the steps and the traditions, and it says the traditions portion of It Works How and Why serves as a resource for NA groups and individual members. The book seeks to explore the spiritual principles within the traditions, engaging members with the spirit, not the law, of the traditions, and provides a basis of thought and discussion about the traditions. This portion of the book is not meant to fulfill every need for every group or every member. Rather, it is to be a book that will generate discussion and allow for local interpretation of the practical application of the principles contained in the traditions. You know, I thought that was interesting because you know, when you get into the service structure, sometimes it's like really structured, and I'm not really structured. And sometimes I bounce a lot of different stuff. I have problems with a lot of different stuff that people push, and you know, I understand that we can't violate traditions, but there are local interpretations to the practical applications of these spiritual principles. One of the first times I ran into that was, you know, when I got clean, our group had an H&I chair, and we facilitated an H&I meeting. And, you know, the service structure says that needed to be taken care of at an area level, and it's kind of migrated. But you know, it's at that time, that's what worked. And is it good or bad? I don't know. But at that time, that's what we did. We created a subcommittee to support H&I. One of the things I've learned about the traditions is you know, through applying them is, you know, this is how I relate with y'all. And when I learn these and I start living them with y'all, I take these out into my life. And it's real important that then I can, you know, it's like I face difficulties as they arise, communication problems, differences of opinion, internal controversies, and troubles with individuals and groups everywhere, not just here. You know, so I can take these principles and I can apply them in my job and in my personal relationships. And I'm so grateful for that because, you know, especially at work, you know, I can focus on our primary purpose to be there, you know. And I don't have to get caught up in a lot of other stuff because I spend a lot of time at work, so there's a lot of other stuff going on. You know, just like I spend a lot of time with recovering addicts, and there's a lot of other stuff going on. And the traditions bring me back to focus. You know, what is our primary purpose at work? You know, what is our primary purpose here? What is my primary purpose when I'm going and hanging out with other recovering addicts? You know, and it gives me a sense of direction, and it, you know, when I can apply these principles, it, you know, it gives me a set of guidelines that work, you know. So with that, I'll share.
Thanks.
Love you, Richard.
No.
Okay.
Celeste, I'm an addict.
Hey, Celeste.
don't share after Rusty, and after today, I don't eat a cream-filled donut in front of a room full of people. So Shanna touched on this. The reason I started in the traditions is I got involved in service. But my motive is so that I could argue with you more effectively in a business meeting. I didn't like it when I sat there and people knew things that I didn't know. And I didn't like not getting my way. So for me, it was a very unspiritual motivation that turned out to be a good thing. Because as you guys know, when we start getting involved in recovery, some of us come to the rooms and we try to figure out how to use more effectively, and we end up getting clean. And for me, I wanted to learn how to hurt you with the traditions and beat you and win. And I learned that that's not what service is about. So there's the running cliche that, the steps keep me from committing suicide, the traditions keep me from committing homicide, and the concepts keep me from committing genocide. And so the traditions aspect of it, I guess the main way that I apply that in my life is in my relationships with other people, obviously. And the people that I'm around it's not only this group and all of you and the fellowship aspect of it, and the functioning of this group, but there's my work and there's my family. And the main relationship being with my spouse, who's another recovering addict. So I am uber codependent. I come by that very honestly, and somebody said this the other day, and it's my running saying right now: the traditions help me stay in my lane. So it's something, the concepts that are in them, the spiritual principles that are in them, those are conversations that my sponsor and I have that get brought up about, like autonomy, just being my own person. And I'll talk about that more later, but that's, I've been out of service for a little while now, and started a family. So that has been the main application for me, is in those relationships. Fun.
Thank you.
Thanks, Liz.
I'm still rusty.
Rusty.
You realize there's 95 years sitting up here?
And I'm the baby, and that's awesome.
It is awesome.
15 years.
Yeah.
People hate going after me, and I guess probably because I've just been around so damn long. I learned about the traditions by working them before I did the steps. I got clean right before the basic text was released. I was in a group where everybody was clean and sober. See, what the traditions mean to me, you need to understand where the time and what was going on in the world at the time. And everybody was clean and sober. Everybody went to AA and NA. Some of them went to any other A's they could find. We were told that you can get clean in Narcotics Anonymous, but if you want any lengthy clean time, you had to go somewhere else, specifically AA. That's what I was told for quite a long time. Our founder was an ANDA. He was a drug addict and alcoholic. He actually got sober first, and then, because there was no NA, that's why he's our founder. And then in 3 years, he started getting involved with Narcotics Anonymous. So here's a man with 3 years clean starting a fellowship. Now the traditions came from AA. So when NA wrote their book, The Basic Text, I listened for 10 months to everybody talk about this. The book is finished, the book is finished. I got clean, the book was finished. It's just it hadn't been out yet. It's coming, the book is coming, the book is coming. And the GSR was the one that was on the mailing list, and he walked into the room and he threw the book on the table and he said, "That's the biggest crock of shit I ever read." And they proceeded to dissect it, and they took a group conscience not to adopt the basic text of Narcotics Anonymous, and I was just dumbfounded. And I had relapse after 9 months and for a day, and then got clean again. So I was just like in shock. Why do y'all not want this book? And it was because of the traditions. The way it was interpreted was one disease, one program. You don't have to go to dual fellowships. And they didn't like that because they were scared. Everything they knew, that group, this was in Tennessee, was about 2 fellowships, 24 steps, 2 sponsors, 2 service structures. And to change that, I realize now, scared the Jesus out of them. So they made a conscious decision in a business meeting not to adopt the book, aka the traditions. And that was what they said. I was there. It didn't take long, but that group folded and 7 people died. I relapsed with over a year. When I got clean 10 months later, where's the group? Well, the group doesn't exist anymore. 2 people basically stayed clean because they went to AA. And they were sick. See, we were right. So the traditions, to me, when they get violated, scares me. And I probably reacted appropriately at times, or I have in my recovery at different times. You can't do that, you're going to kill people. You know, that kind of shit. And so I started understanding the traditions were something that would save us. And after being clean a little while, I started becoming interested in NA history, and there are documents and stories and things about the beginning of NA, of how it started and then it folded and it started and it folded and it bounced around, and finally it took Jimmy Kennan saying, if we don't follow the traditions, we'll never make it. So it was the decision by Jimmy and a woman and a gay Mexican man and a black lady and a black man to follow the traditions, that this program is even here today. It's that they're that important. Because if they hadn't followed them, and when they weren't following them to the letter, they had problems. Now, where did they come from? I also looked into that, and I'm a big history buff on that as well. Bill Wilson wrote out to the AA Fellowship and said, what are your rules? And they wrote back, all the different groups wrote back their rules, and the rules were such that if you applied them all, no one could go to a meeting. You had to be a certain age, you had to be a certain gender, you had to be a certain race, you know, you had to have drank so much. I mean, it was just phenomenal. So they came up with the 12 traditions, and that was probably right before NA came out. I don't remember the exact year. I have learned that traditions are not breakable, they are violatable. And it was explained to me that you can have a glass you drink water out of and you pour gasoline into it, it's violated. But you can wash it out and reuse it. So it's not broken. It's not something, because broken implies cannot be reused. But traditions can be something that can be reused. And then I was taught that traditions are something that I'm supposed to be practicing in my personal life, and if I was only working the steps, I was only working half a program. Now some people would argue a third, because of the concept finally came out. It hadn't been that long ago, I don't think. And that there were spiritual principles that I needed to live behind the steps, including the HOW. So there's honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness they talk about. And then there's the 12 steps, that's 15, 3 and 15. 3 and 12 is 15. And then there's 12 traditions, that's 12 and 15 is 27. And one of my heroes, Greg P., said there were, 27 spiritual principles that I had to live by, and if I didn't know the traditions, I couldn't live by those. And like's been shared already, they help me deal with other people. My boss, my wife, my children, other people in the rooms, people on the streets, driving down the road, pounding on the steering wheel, trying to get to a traditions workshop because somebody ran off the damn road. And like, Shannon said, sitting in a business meeting and voting for something that I don't particularly agree with, but I know will be good for my group. Because going to a meeting and then have it not happen is bad to me. Because I went to a meeting once and there was literally a thing on the door that said we canceled the meeting, not here, just in Tennessee when I first got clean. And we went bowling. The group has gone bowling. The meeting's been canceled. I thought, well, you assholes, I don't know what a bowling alley is. I'm not from this town. I drove 30 minutes to get to the damn meeting, So, that's kind of my background and my take on the traditions and why they mean so much to me. There's the part at the beginning. Read the part right before that.
You keep what you have only with vigilance, and just as freedom for the individual comes from the 12 steps, so freedom for the group springs from our traditions. As long as the ties that bind us together are stronger than those that would tear us apart, all will be well.
Thank you. Vigilance. I looked it up because my sponsor told me to. Ever watchfulness. That means I have to be ever watchful. That we as a group have to be ever watchful. Vigilant. We keep what we have only with vigilance. We keep what we have, our recovery, because we're ever watchful. And then my biggest pet peeve. Somebody else want to share it that knows it?
Freedom for the group!
Not from the group. People will read that and they will see the individual. Freedom for the individual comes from the 12 steps. So freedom from the group, for the group, springs from our traditions. They get it wrong. I can't even do it wrong. You don't get freedom from. You get freedom for the group. What are some ties that bind us together and those that would tear us apart?
Damn.
This is the discussion part. I was done with my personal shit. This is the discussion part.
Oh,
Before we get into one.
Okay.
I'm Richard, and I'm an
Go,
addict.
Richard.
Donuts and coffee. Anybody
Those tear us
we
apart?
have drinks up here? So
Those are binding.
No, but we have refreshments if anybody want refreshments.
Thank you, Richard.
So,
Outside issues. They tear us apart.
Oh, I thought we were jumping down that one. I was
Yeah,
confused.
no. The things that can tear us apart. I don't know how you guys feel about the political atmosphere in the world right now. I don't particularly give a shit how you feel about it either, because we're in here. But that is definitely something that, if we were talking about that today, we might not feel as unified as we do in this moment.
I think things like, and these don't happen all the time, but gossip or getting involved in chaos, control, some addicts with time, kind of like so that's what I'm talking about, get very controlling and they do twist things and try to manipulate. And if you're new and you see a bunch of clean time, you think, just like I thought, man, they must know what they're talking about. They've been clean that long, and sure they've done something right if they're stayed clean a long time. That's why Richard said, learning about this stuff for yourself and with your own personal, with your own personal sponsor can help you kind of figure out, what that stuff means to you and how you can apply it. And, but yeah, Terry, I think of gossip, I think of chaos, I think of sexual activity among several people that can tear some shit up. Weak sponsorship. Maybe a sponsor does something that rarely happens, but sleep with their sponsee or someone robbing a group, and that's more extreme situations. Fighting, literal fighting, things like that can really. I guess you could literally tear stuff apart, and it's probably happened. But things like that send a really bad message, and especially if you're new. We've had things where there's been sexual stuff, people kind of preying on people, and we both had to talk to women and say, we're not trying to scare you off from here, but if so-and-so approaches you, you just let one of us know and tell them we'll leave you the fuck alone. Same gay stuff, whatever. But those are more extreme things, but yes, they can definitely tear a group apart. We almost folded over fucking not smoking in here, man.
Oh my God.
Okay? It was bad. It was years of people getting to the point to where not fucking smoking. And that lets you know how petty a fucking addict can be. It literally about tore the group apart. It was bad.
It's in our policy now that you can't have it. Once we put something into policy, it has to stay into policy for 6 months. And that is because every fucking month we came back and we would re-vote for smoking or non-smoking. And there was such division over it that people who were friends who got clean together, sponsorship trees, sponsee brothers and sisters, were not speaking to each other. People were, it was yelling, screaming, cussing, wouldn't sit next to you in a meeting over smoking, and it just got ugly, but so when it talks about our hard-won traditions, that's a tradition in our own group. That's a policy in our group that's how that came to be, because of something that was so divisive.
And also those things that I was talking about can tear me apart too, and I can eventually use behind it. So,
Yeah.
you know.
Anything that causes disunity, which is tradition one, so that's a good segue into tradition one. Because tradition one says our common welfare should come first. Personal recovery depends on NA unity. And it says in one of our books, and I always get it backwards, but it works both ways. The group is precious to the individual, and the individual is precious to the group. Because without the members in the rooms, then the group doesn't grow and flourish, and it's just a bunch of old people sitting here, you know. But the unity, the common bond of pain of recovery, the pain of addiction, and the process of recovery, those are some things that unify us. You know, the addict walking through the door who's in pain, regardless of how long they've been clean or if they're new, generally take precedent over everything else because we all know what that feels like. And I have seen and been part of, you know, people who didn't agree on something put all that crap aside because an addict was suffering and needed somebody to talk to. And to me, tradition one, we talk a lot about the 12th tradition, you know, as we go around, and especially in this meeting, we do it every time the meeting closes. But, you know, to me, tradition one is probably one of the more important because without unity, there is no personal recovery for Rusty. So if something causes a problem, it is a problem, and it's not worth it. It's just not worth it when there are people who are out there hurting. And that's another thing that the traditions do in general, is that they help us maintain that atmosphere of recovery. They help us have that attraction rather than promotion. You know, people want to come here. So being aware of what I'm doing and what the group is doing to make all that possible, the traditions help us stay here and keep us from hurting ourselves, basically. Anybody want to talk about tradition one?
Sure. You know, Rusty before was talking about what causes disunity and what causes unity, and I think the biggest things for me that create a bond of unity in a group is a few different things, and one is our feelings. You know, the feelings of suffering and despair that we've all gone through. You know, that is a main bond. When I got here, you know, I remember some guy saying he felt like a scared little kid in a meeting when I was new, and like my jaw dropped up, and that not only did somebody else in the world feel like that, he opened his mouth and he said it, you know, which was just mind-blowing to me that somebody would say that out loud, you know. But you know, we share that, and hopefully later on down the road we share the joys that come with this process of recovery. I think the main thing that brings us together in the Narcotics Anonymous group is our desire to help each other stay clean for one more 24 hours. You know, that's why we meet, you know. And if we can put that unity first, you know, a lot of this other outside stuff just falls away, you know, because that's, you know, we get to come in, we get to help each other stay clean for one more 24 hours. And the best way that, you know, that's possible. And, you know, we go out of our way to help a still suffering addict stay clean that has a desire to stay clean for another 24 hours. We will go out of our way to help that person, you know, but they got to call before they use, you know. But we meet here, you know, we have 2 meetings, sometimes 3 meetings a day, just to have a place that people can come and try to get this process of recovery started, so that we can, you know, hopefully, you know, and I'd love to grab everyone that comes through the door and just like, you know, get this. But I you know, the best I can do is to be available. To be available to help that still suffering addict try to stay clean one more 24 hours, because I'm that still suffering addict some days too. And you know, I may not say it to somebody when I call them, but it may be a rough day when I call somebody and start talking about the weather or, you know, what I'm doing that day. And just that connection helps me sometimes. And sometimes I will say it, you know, that I'm having a really bad day today. And, you know, but I think that's our main bond of unity coming through here is that desire to help each other stay clean. And I think that is so strong with us because of that feeling, those shared feelings of despair and hopelessness, and you know, the self-hatred, that's the stuff that we all felt coming through.
Anybody else on one? If you had to walk away, if I walk away from tradition one and I want to know what the spiritual principle behind it is and how do I apply that on my personal life, you know, to me it's unity and common welfare. Now, some traditions don't have a one-word. Got it, almost.
His face.
Get away.
His face.
Okay. But I heard it said that traditions are for groups. Well, what are groups made of? They're made of people. So a group can be a group of two, which includes me and my wife, me and my children, me and my family. So how does unity and common welfare in tradition one apply there? How do I practice it there? Because it says in step 12, all my affairs. I think I got that right, didn't it? Yeah. Well, one of them does. So the unity and the common welfare of my family depends on wanting to be a part of it and not doing things that would create disunity amongst that family. So it helps me there as well. So this is not just about the group and about addicts and about this room. This is, you know, traditions for me spill out into my job. You know, I have an asshole for a boss, but I'm dedicated to my company. You know, I wanted to have a unified company and the common welfare of that business staying in business. You know, so I want to do things that promote that rather than take away from that, just like I do here in this room. So before we move on to tradition two, anybody got a question on tradition one? Is that on tradition one?
I like to argue. It's something that I have a really hard time with in my personal life, is that once something escalates, walking away from it. And it's something that I've had to work on a lot over the years. And the way that I apply the first tradition is that the overall health and well-being of my family brings me joy. And so the more willingness I have to work on that health, that unity, that coming together, the happier I am and the healthier I am in my own life. So I told y'all, I'll talk about my family.
Okay, before we move on to two, let's do this one. I've been falsely accused of a relapse, which was totally untrue. The rumor got started in my home group. People were calling my fiance and not me. I've never been so disappointed, hurt, or angry. What would you do and how would you have handled it? I have been falsely accused of using, and I just ignore it. Because usually the people who are doing the gossip are, you know, for some reason I'm the center of their world, and at that time I was. And they wanted to talk about me. Fortunately, at the time, I had enough clean time in recovery not to care what other people thought about that particular thing, and I thought, well, it must suck to be you in order to talk about me that damn much. And it gave somebody else a break, because if they weren't going to talk about me, they were going to talk about someone else. Disappointed, I can understand that. Hurt and angry. Well, the reason I'm angry is because I got hurt, because anger is secondary emotion to pain, fear, frustration, and hurt is a version of pain. What would you do? I just ignored it and went on doing what I was doing. That's how I handled it. And how would you have handled it? When someone comes to me and said, so-and-so relapsed, you know, there was if you can't smell it, you can't tell it, was what I was told. You know, if you aren't sitting there when it happens, it's just all hearsay. Now, if it walks like a duck and talks like a duck and quacks like a duck, and 17 people say, hey, that's a duck, maybe we need to look at it, you know. If 27 people call me a jackass, I need to look at for ears and a tail, but if one person does, you know, screw them. See, the things that are of value that I get out of the steps are not susceptible to outside interference. You can't take those spiritual principles that I have learned in working the steps and the tradition away from me. They're not vulnerable to you. And I don't surround myself with a whole hell of a lot of people that I don't like and don't like me. You know, my parents raised me in a religion that says you have to love everyone. Well, I don't follow that. Screw that. If I don't like you, I'm not going to love you. Love's too powerful emotion to waste on someone that I don't even like. You know, I have to treat you with dignity and respect, but I don't have to like you, and I don't have to love you, and I don't have to be around you. Anybody else want to chat?
Shannon, I'm an
Shannon?
Well, first of all, I'm sorry that happened to you. It's
Yes.
kind of one of those rare situations that we talk about that can get people out of the rooms. But you said, how would you have handled it? Well, you're handling it the right way. You're still coming to meetings because you earned your seat. I haven't been accused of relapse. People thought I was using because I was so hyper before when they first met me, which is more comical. I've been accused of like when my best friend was like a lot older than me, and people thought we were sleeping together and stuff like that. And it was a rare situation. It was very platonic, and I was when I say like a daughter, I don't mean like in a codependent way, but just there was nothing happening there. It was just kind of ridiculous, and we would just laugh about it because we had a real. He's my oldest. I call him my soul friend. He's my oldest soul friend, and we helped each other keep each other alive, like literally for real. And so, and we still speak and everything, and it's pretty fucking awesome. But anyway, people thought we were sleeping together and all this kind of stuff, you know. And he was like 40, and I was like 17 or 18. You know, it was just like, I don't suggest that if you're that young doing that. Okay, most of the time it ends up bad. Okay, and it's not a good idea. Women get with women, da da da. And I'm not saying that I'm like unique in that kind of way, but I do recognize that it is a very rare situation, that particular thing, but it was totally non-sexual or anything like that. And but we're accused of that kind of stuff. But most of the time, people are doing that kind of stuff, like accusing people. They normally don't stick around. They normally will use themselves, or that they just go somewhere else, you know. And but those kind of things, especially if you're new, can make you not want to come to NA, or make a person think that's all the NA. And that place is just fucked up and nobody cares, and that's not the truth. That's one or two people. Okay, and so it's very important to know that's not the whole of NA at all. And there's dysfunctional people, addicts. I mean, it's going to happen. I can understand disappointment because that's not what we preach here. I hate to say preach, but we don't preach that kind of shit here. We preach keep coming back. We preach we love you. We preach, we want you to get a better new way of life. We want you to get freedom from addiction. That's what the fellowship, they don't preach, accusing people and being hateful and gossiping and stuff like that. But it happens because we're human beings. So, and people not directly confronting you is pretty normal, It's even in a regular situation, people don't like to come up and say, well, da-da-da-da. At work, I hate it. I'll obsess over that conversation 100 fucking times, man. And the worst case never happens. But that's just part of being, I think, immature too. And not being, we're very immature when we get here. We're like kids, some of us. And I think part of that not confronting someone and going directly to them, yeah, it's chicken shit, okay, whatever. But it's not being mature. It's not how you handle a problem. If someone thinks I'm using, or I think one of my sponsees is using, I need to go to that person and say, what's going on? Are you using? Or are you really sleeping around? Or are you really going up there doing stuff with the group? And that takes a lot of maturity, I think, and adult stuff. But we have to learn that over time. And it's a process, and it's a continual process.
Anybody else?
Sure, just a couple of quick things. Won't touch on what a lot of these folks shared, but two things in my experience that I've experienced is one, eventually the truth will be known. Sometimes you just got to be patient, but like Rusty said, if it walks like a duck and talks like a duck, and if you haven't used, eventually it will be, the truth will come out. And one thing, this is some personal experience of myself. I had a resentment against this guy at work, and he's just an ass. and I'll say it because he is. It's not my opinion. It was a group conscience. You know, so I know that my perception of reality was not that far skewed. So, but I had a resentment, so I did what y'all tell me to do. You know, I started praying for this guy every day going to work. I'd pray for this guy, and it was like every day I'd go to work. And finally, I was driving to work one day, going, you know, shit, I've got people that I actually care about and love that I need to be praying about, and here I am praying for this asshole at work, you know, and all of a sudden, my priorities just 180 degrees reversed because he wasn't even worth my time, you know. And I was spending all this time praying for him, and I still pray for him, but it was like the feelings reversed because because it no longer bothered me that the way he treated me or the way he approached situation, because he was who he was, you know. But it shifted my priorities and how important is this person. So,
It's been an hour. I've been told that the smokers need to smoke and people need to smoke. We're going to take a 5 to 7 minute break and then we'll pick up again.
Real time.
Well, okay, 5 to 10, whatever.
Wait, what'd you say was the